We have located 10 deceased individuals in 13 locations.
The urgent hunt for 2 murder suspects after a horrifying string of stabbings in Saskatchewan. Special coverage tonight, the prairies on high alert for hours and a remote community stunned.
It is horrific what has occurred in our province today.
What we know about the suspects and how the attack unfolded in the early hours of the morning.
Then this guy come walking up here and he said, I need somebody to take me to the hospital. My mouth has been hurt.
Plus, expert insight on a vast manhunt. This is The National. Good evening, I'm Vashi Kapelos. Ian is away. We begin with a major developing story on the prairies. Tonight, at least 10 people are dead, 15 are wounded, and 3 provinces are under an emergency alert. Police are hunting for these 2 suspects, Damien and Miles Sanderson, wanted in a mass stabbing attack in Saskatchewan. People in that province, Alberta and Manitoba, are being warned to be on alert.
If Damien and Miles are listening or receive this information, I would ask that they turn themselves into police immediately. They are considered armed and dangerous.
Sam Sampson joins us now from Regina. Sam, police gave that update late this afternoon, and they spoke a bit about their search for those 2 suspects.
That's right, Vashi, and RCMP say they're doing everything they can to try and track down these 2 men. They do believe the suspects are still here in Regina, but as you mentioned, they're warning everyone from Alberta to Manitoba.
Our thoughts are with the many victims, deceased and injured, their family, friends, and communities. It is horrific what has occurred in our province today.
It's nothing short of a tragedy. A shocking crime in several small communities. 10 dead, at least 15 injured, found in 13 separate locations. It started here, about 200 kilometers northeast of Saskatoon in James Smith Cree Nation around 6 this morning. RCMP say multiple people were stabbed here in James Smith and in the nearby community of Weldon. Police say these 2 suspects, 31-year-old Damien Sanderson and 30-year-old Miles Sanderson, targeted some of their victims. Others appeared to be attacked at random.
At 8:20, the dangerous persons alert was extended to the entire province of Saskatchewan.
This woman says she saw the emergency alert to stay home. Shortly after, a man knocked on her door wanting to be taken to hospital, but she didn't feel right about it.
This guy come walking up here and it looked like his coat over his face, and he said, I need somebody to take me to the hospital. My mouth has been hurt. He said, I've been stabbed and my mouth has been hurt. And I said, well, let's see. And he says, no, it's real bad. I can't show you. I said, what is your name? And he apparently said it, but I couldn't tell what his name was.
She did not let him in. At least 3 people were airlifted to a Saskatoon hospital, others taken in ambulances to closer hospitals. The Saskatchewan Health Authority says hospitals had to call in more staff to deal with the emergency. It's believed the 2 suspects fled in a black Nissan Rogue with a Saskatchewan license plate of 119 MPI.
Their location and direction of travel is unknown. This is why we need everyone in the province to stay vigilant and report any suspicious activity by calling 911 immediately.
Their car was last seen in Regina just before noon local time.
And on that note, Sam, give us a sense of what's happening in Regina, where you are this evening.
Well, when we did get that notification that the suspects may be here in Regina, police warned everyone. They suggested stay at home, just shelter in place. But the problem with that is more than 30,000 people were here in Regina for the CFL Labor Day Classic matchup between the Rough Riders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So everybody who came to the game, thousands of people had to have their IDs confirmed at police check stops, and there were extra police at the stadium. Now, going back to James Smith Cree Nation, of course, they have declared a local state of emergency. They have 2 health centers there, Vashi, to help people physically and mentally start healing from this mass murder event.
Thanks very much, Sam. Sam Sampson for us in Regina. Let's go back to that resident you saw in Sam's piece just a moment ago. She and her mom had a brush with someone believed to be one of the suspects. CBC News spoke with them earlier today about what they saw.
Well, I woke up this morning to the alert at 7 o'clock. I heard the alert, it woke me up. So I got up and I had my coffee ready and I came out to sit here in the deck like I do every morning and enjoy my coffee. And this car went flying by.
And I got up and we were wondering, I come out here, we were wondering what was going on.
And then a couple minutes later, a gentleman walked around the side of the house and came to the front with something over his face.
And he said, I need somebody to take me to the hospital. My mouth has been hurt.
And I said, well, can I see? Can I see what your face looks like? And he says, oh no, it's way too bad for that. So he kept it covered. And then I said, well, I'll have to go call somebody.
So she went into the house and he took off.
This is not a good guy because he's running away when we offered to help him. So I went in and called the police, and within about 10 minutes, the police were here and got our information, and that was it.
That was Doreen and Lee's in Weldon, Saskatchewan. The mom and daughter spoke with CBC News earlier today about their brief encounter with a possible suspect in today's stabbings. Let's bring in Ellen Morrow, who's been digging into this story for us this evening. Ellen, what do you know at this point about the two suspects?
Well, Vashi, the most important point we can make about the suspect at this hour is that police are imploring people, if you see them, stay away and call the authorities. The suspects' names are Damien Sanderson and Miles Sanderson. The RCMP say Damien Sanderson is 31 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, 155 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Miles Sanderson, police say, is 30 years old, 6'1", and 240 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. RCMP say the two may have been traveling in the Arcola Avenue area of Regina. That's east of downtown Regina late this morning, according to a tip from the public. In the alerts today, police said the men may have been driving a black Nissan Rogue, Saskatchewan license plate 119 MPI, but police said in their update just before 4 p.m. local time that they don't know if the men may have switched vehicles since this morning. And there is just so much we don't know at this point, Vashi. What could lead to such horrific violence? There has been speculation as well about the relationship between the suspects, given they have the same last name. The police said this afternoon they're still working to figure that out. They also were asked whether these suspects were known to authorities. And again, the RCMP wouldn't say anything further on that, though it does appear that Miles Sanderson may have been wanted by police since May, according to a post on Saskatchewan Crime Stoppers, which doesn't include any information about alleged crimes at that point. Tonight, there is a dangerous persons alert for him and Damien Sanderson, not only in Saskatchewan, but in Manitoba and Alberta as well. Police say there's no indication the men have left Saskatchewan, but they just can't be sure, Vashi.
Okay, thanks very much, Ellen. Ellen Morrow for us in Toronto. For more on the ongoing manhunt Ellen referred to, we're joined by former RCMP Major Crimes Investigator Bruce Pitt-Payne. He's in Maple Ridge, BC. Hi, Bruce.
Hello.
Good to have you with us. Let's start off with what police are doing right now. What does this manhunt involve? Take us behind the scenes of what you would expect them to be doing at this moment.
Yeah, it's going to be, Vasi, the manhunt and just an immense investigation. The manhunt right now will involve roadblock setup, checkpoints. They will be looking on social media. They will be doing financial checks, anything and everything to find intelligence that could lead them to these two persons. And it's going to be a long, busy night for everybody involved. And I guarantee they're not sparing any person power for that. On top of that, they're processing the scenes as well. They have to have, which I'm sure they have at this point, but the reasonable grounds to even arrest them should they find them, which means they can't just look for them and process the scenes later. They have to happen in concert. 13 crime scenes, 10 autopsies, at least 15 witness interviews from the surviving injured persons. That's just the tip of the iceberg. They are going to be going nonstop and probably be getting help from outside RCMP divisions as well.
Bruce, what does 13 different crime scenes mean from your perspective? What does it tell us about the nature of this crime?
It very much like in Nova Scotia. It was moving, it was rapid, and each crime scene has to be processed separately. You can't just sort of send a bunch of RCMP members in to look at them. They have to worry about cross-contamination accidentally. Everything, regardless of how fast this is unfolding, has to be done perfectly. So it's a matter probably of manpower, person power, sorry, I should use that expression, more so than expertise, and that's where I'm sure they're going to be sharing with other divisions.
And just quickly before I let you go, let's talk about public safety for a second, because police, their instinct is that the suspects could still be in Regina, though the alert has been extended to other provinces. They spoke about that a little bit earlier. How worried should people near Regina, in Regina, be for their safety this evening?
Well, I still haven't heard an assessment of the credibility or reliability of the Regina sighting. They're going to, as I think the chief of police said for Regina, they're going to act on it as if it were 100% real, and that's absolutely fair enough. But they might not be in Regina. They might be somewhere else, and that's not to have people panic. But anybody within that area, including now the adjacent provinces of Manitoba and Alberta, should be vigilant. They should follow the advice on what I thought was a very well-worded alert, which is, just be prudent, be self-aware of where you're going. Don't let strangers into your house. Just be extra on guard until this has been dealt with.
Bruce, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your insights. That's
You're welcome.
Bruce Pitt-Payne, former RCMP major crimes investigator, coming to us from Maple Ridge, BC. Let's bring in Sam McKeag. She's CBC News' anchor in Regina. Hi, Sam. Active manhunt we were just talking about with Bruce in that city. How are people dealing with it right now?
Vashi, I think there is a real appetite for information. I'd say there's a heightened intensity around the city and around the province. And that's because as we speak, more than 33,000 people are currently filing out of Mosaic Stadium in Regina as the Labor Day Classic has concluded between the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And before people went into that stadium earlier today, they received a public safety alert telling them about the dangerous persons potentially being in Regina and that they should shelter in place. Also, a number of those people who traveled down Saskatchewan highways to come to that football game were stopped on the highway at checkpoints and asked to prove who they were. Checkpoints on Labor Day weekend are not uncommon in Saskatchewan. They help stop impaired drivers. But asking who you are to prove your identity, that is different.
And police are saying, be alert. Exercise vigilance. We heard Bruce echo that. Have the police given any indication of what exactly people should be watching for?
There are a lot of rumors swirling right now, particularly on social media, but police are saying this is a case of if you see something, say something and call 911. Regina Police Chief Evan Bray says someone knows where these two suspects are and they need to speak up. And also, they have a lot of help from other provincial agencies and from Manitoba and Alberta as well. And at this point, police told us that Alberta and Manitoba police have not given them any indication that the suspects have entered into other provinces. And so they are still treating it like those suspects are in Regina. But at this point, police are doing everything they can in the city and otherwise to do what they can to find Sanderson and Sanderson.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Sam McKeag for us in Regina. And we are going to continue to track this developing story throughout the evening. We'll have more out of Saskatchewan and on the police response a little later in the show. Let's turn now to Quebec, though, where politicians' safety has emerged as a key issue in the province's election campaign. It's been just 1 week since the campaign kicked off, but already multiple candidates have been targeted with threats and violence. Valeria Corey-Minocchio now on the growing concerns 10 years after an attack that shook the province.
Minutes into Pauline Marois' victory speech, 2 security guards quickly whisked her off stage. She was the target of the attack on the Parti Québécois election night party in 2012. A lone gunman killed 1 man and injured another. Marois says she kept quiet about the attack, but she recently told Radio-Canada that was a mistake.
Je crois que je n'aurais pas dû minimiser autant cet événement. Dans ce cas-là, j'aurais pu mettre davantage l'attention, faire porter l'attention sur le fait que c'était un attentat terroriste.
10 years after the attack, security concerns are top of mind as the provincial election campaign enters its 2nd week.
It's not new, and it continued after Madame Marois incident. Just look at my Facebook in the last 2 years, you'll see that some interventions are very violent.
Quebec police have set up an emergency hotline for candidates who feel unsafe. In recent days, 2 people were arrested for alleged threats against candidates. 1 man in connection with this photoshopped image of a CAQ campaign poster. Another man is accused of criminally harassing Quebec Liberal candidate Marois Risky.
I don't want to give power to the people who want to threaten me.
The constituency office of another Quebec Liberal candidate was broken into and vandalized. The Conservative Party of Quebec says volunteers were threatened while putting up signs. This security analyst says one part of the solution is for all politicians to tone down their personal attacks.
Promotions of half news or half truth is definitely deteriorating the quality of our democratic process. The other element is the authorities. The authorities need to prosecute, to investigate and to prosecute. And third and last, the voters do not vote for somebody who promotes anger, who promotes hate.
All party leaders have condemned the violent threats, saying they have no place in an election campaign. Valeria Corey Minocchio, CBC News, Montreal.
A document obtained by CBC News shows that as the RCMP was working to remove the convoy protest that shut down part of Ottawa this past winter, it feared being betrayed from within. According to an internal threat advisory dated February 10th, the RCMP noted that some convoy supporters had previous ties to law enforcement and warned that active duty Mounties sympathetic to the convoy movement could leak police plans to the protesters. So far, there's no indication from the RCMP that any leaks occurred. As kids get ready to head back to school, many provinces are dropping COVID-19 restrictions, including Ontario, where mandatory isolation is no longer required if you test positive. Jamie Strachan now on how parents are feeling and what the experts are saying.
In southern Ontario, the last weekend of the Canadian National Exhibition means one thing: school is just around the corner.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to see my whole class and all my friends.
I'm going to middle school, so I'm going to be meeting new people and I can make new friends.
For students, it's always a time of nerves and excitement. Mixed emotions for parents as well, as students return to the classroom with loosened COVID protocols in place.
Ontario kind of scrapped all of the regulations with regards to COVID. It scares me a little bit, but the kids need to be in school. And they need to learn, and they need to be with other kids.
Ontario recently announced that those who test positive for COVID no longer need to isolate for 5 days, and children can return to school if their symptoms have improved for at least 24 hours. Wearing a mask is suggested, but not mandatory. A number of other provinces have similar rules in place.
Overall, I am a little bit nervous, just knowing that you don't have to isolate at all, and that does expose our little ones. Overall, we have to have faith in our community and know that if people are feeling unwell, they're going to keep their kids home.
Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health says it's part of Ontario's shift out of the crisis phase of the pandemic.
We know that an uninterrupted routine of in-person school is important to the social and emotional development of children and youth.
I'd rather that we waited longer before making these changes.
Dr. Fahad Razak, head of the province's soon-to-be disbanded science table, says the change in rules ignores the data.
We have a lot more circulating virus now, as I've said, 5 or 10 times higher than last year.
He suggests keeping the current isolation and masking rules in place.
Each time you make a transition, do it cautiously, get us closer to that normal, but also by minimizing the risk that you have to pull back.
For students, this September will be more normal than the last few years, but the shadow of COVID remains. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Passengers were stuck on a ferry that runs between Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island for 8 hours today due to a steering issue. They were en route to Wood Islands, PEI, when the problem came up, at which point the captain dropped both of the ship's anchors. The ferry was finally able to get back to shore with the help of a Canadian Coast Guard vessel. There were no reported injuries or damage to the boat, and it will undergo an inspection before being sent out again. There are new images tonight of a growing wildfire near Jasper, Alberta. Parks Canada says it grew nearly 4 times in size since Saturday. It's now estimated to be 15 square kilometers. An air quality statement has been issued for the region. No communities are at risk, but officials are advising residents to be prepared for a possible power outage. And over in BC, several communities are under evacuation orders or alerts tonight as wildfires continue to burn. As Susanna De Silva tells us, despite a calmer fire season overall, the risk isn't going away anytime soon.
September may have started, but BC's fire season is far from over. This fire, likely human-caused, started Friday in BC's southern interior.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing temperatures still 6 to 8 degrees higher than seasonal average this time of year. We did have temperatures reach 38 degrees in some areas last week, which means that humidity levels are quite low.
The aggressive Battleship Mountain fire north of Prince George has led to several small evacuation orders and has put the entire community of Hudson's Hope on alert, while crews battle 2 other large fires in the region. To the south, 2 fires are burning near Manning Park, including one that crossed the U.S. border.
It was very hazy, a little bit of the definitions muted, but it had a very gray feel.
Several recreation areas around Manning Park have been closed, and the resort is on alert. It was full this weekend, including a wedding, but staff say some cooler temperatures have helped, but not enough to get some people to stay.
You know, there's always those people that want to leave when they see smoke or hear fire. So we did have some people who wanted to leave from mostly the campgrounds. And hey, we're not going to say anything negatively about that because people have to feel comfortable.
A late start to summer weather means BC is below the 20-year average in terms of land lost to fires, less than 500 square kilometers this year compared to 8,600 last year.
No time to be complacent at this point. However, we are going to start trending in the right direction soon here as temperatures do drop. Like I said, number of new fire starts each day is dropping, which is a great sign, but certainly not out of the clear yet.
Especially as officials expect the month of September to be hotter than average. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
In Pakistan, the flooding is intensifying. Today, authorities allowed a freshwater lake to overflow, displacing another 100,000 people in an effort to protect countless others. As Peter Cowan reports, 8 organizations are warning the worst is yet to come.
For people arriving at makeshift camps, the first priority is food. They've made it out of the rising floodwaters even as their homes were washed away. Mayor Mohammed and his family are crammed in a school that's become a shelter. We have arrived here in a terrible state, he says. Some good people here gave us shelter. Now we're getting some aid from the government and from some local people. But it's only enough to fill our stomachs. 1,200 people have died, but aid agencies warn it's only going to get worse.
The waterborne diseases that will come, which will take more lives.
As the floodwaters go down, cases of diarrhea, cholera, and malaria are expected to rise.
All of these combined will make these children even more weaker because there's not even proper water to drink.
It's started already. At one clinic, 600 to 800 people a day are coming in for help from just 5 or 6 doctors. We provide IV fluids as most patients who come here suffer from diarrhea, malaria, high-grade fever, and skin problems, this doctor says.
There's shoes as well. I see some sweaters here.
Canadians are also finding ways to help. Jafar Syed is a second-generation Canadian. He's filling his house with donations.
These are traditional Pakistani clothes.
In the face of such immense suffering, a bag of clothes may seem small, but he has to do what he can to help.
The winter is coming also in Pakistan, and it does get quite cold there. So, think about it as one sweater given. It's something that a child can wear and not be cold at night.
Canada's Minister for International Development is promising more than the $5 million Canada has committed so far. Harjit Sajjan says he wants to hear from reports on the ground about what's needed most. And for Canadians who want to donate, he says a plan to match those donations will be announced in the coming days. Peter Cowan, CBC News, Ottawa.
We are learning more about the suspects in one of Saskatchewan's worst mass killings. At least 10 people are dead and 15 injured after a stabbing spree. Coming up, we'll dig in more about the police response on this breaking story. And Donald Trump rallying his base weeks after the FBI search his Florida home.
This egregious abuse of the law is going to produce a backlash, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before.
And
Canada is golden!
Canada beats its biggest rival for the top spot. We're back after this.
We believe some of the victims have been targeted by the suspect and others have been attacked randomly.
A total of at least 25 victims, including 10 stabbed to death in rural Saskatchewan. 2 suspects still at large. That's the top story we're following tonight, and we'll have much more on that unfolding manhunt in Saskatchewan coming up. But let's turn briefly now to the battle for control of the United States Congress. Midterm elections in just 2 months. Democrats say the fate of democracy itself in that country is on the ballot, calling out supporters of Donald Trump by name as the threat. As Kyle Bax shows us Trump's response this weekend to call his enemies lawless, sick, evil, and divisive.
In his first public appearance since his Florida home was raided by the FBI, The former president wasting little time before going after his successor and justice officials.
This egregious abuse of the law is going to produce a backlash, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represented extremism.
2 days earlier, Joe Biden's prime-time address warned about the state of democracy in the United States, condemning Donald Trump's supporters in the Republican Party.
For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not.
Pennsylvania is a key battleground in the upcoming midterm elections. Democracy is already becoming a major theme.
I think it is great that the president, first of all, calls things what they are.
But even among some former aides of Trump, the response is divided.
Look, I'm a lifelong Republican voter who doesn't identify with this extremist wing of the party, who thinks that that far-right wing is dangerous.
I do worry about Biden stepping into this very divisive rhetoric that paints too big of a swath of the country as them versus us.
Considering Biden's low poll numbers, many were already expecting a Republican landslide in the midterms. But fortunes appear to be changing. Many Democrats feel renewed optimism after making progress on infrastructure spending and climate change. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has energized their voters, while gas prices plunge and inflation worries subside.
We see that in the astonishing comeback in the special elections in New York and elsewhere. We're on a roll, and we're going to win this election.
Still, keeping that momentum won't be easy, especially with the midterms more than 8 weeks away. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Washington.
The votes are in, and in a matter of hours, there will be a new leader of the British Conservatives and, by extension, a new British Prime Minister. That happens, of course, after the resignation of Boris Johnson under a shadow of scandal and a high-stakes party leadership race to succeed him. Chris Brown shows us what it reveals about the UK's political future.
Whichever of Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak prevails in the British Conservative leadership race, their prime directive will be to sort out a giant economic mess that awaits them as the new Prime Minister.
Obviously, the energy cost, inflation, there are massive issues.
All summer, candidates have held so-called hustings with the roughly 100,000 card-carrying Conservatives who will largely decide who the new leader will be.
First of all, I will make sure we're not taking money from people in tax and then giving it back to them in handouts.
Truss, the Foreign Secretary, has cast herself as a modern-day Margaret Thatcher.
Can you say tonight, read my lips, no new taxes on your administration, please?
Yes, no new taxes.
Serving up tax cuts as the best way to help families.
She thinks her tax cut is going to help them, which it is not. We are going to, as a Conservative government, leave millions of incredibly vulnerable people at the risk of real destitution.
Good evening.
Sunak, the former Chancellor, is an uber-wealthy former investment banker who appeared to be the frontrunner, but he's resented over backstabbing his former boss and confidant Boris Johnson, leading to his resignation. Political scientist Anand Menon says Conservatives appear more focused on style and personality.
The simple fact of the matter is Rishi Sunak looks and sounds like one of those Davos, citizen of the world, old-fashioned elites that the Conservatives thought Brexit was meant to get rid of. Liz Truss sounds and acts like someone who is one of them.
Most surveys seem to agree that among Conservatives, Truss has a sizable edge. Polls suggest, however, she's not necessarily more electable with voters, and the Labour Party now has a large lead over the Conservatives that will only pile on to the new leader's enormous list of challenges. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
At a time of critical shortage of healthcare workers, Nova Scotia is trying to make it easier for Ukrainian doctors and nurses to work in the provincial system. Internationally trained medical workers have long said it's too hard to transfer their credentials in Canada. As Shayna Luck reports, some feel the moment for change has arrived.
Dr. Alex Shumlat is getting ready to start work in the hospital in Truro, Nova Scotia. A family physician from Odessa, Ukraine. He and his family arrived here just 2 months ago, fleeing the war.
I hope I will work like physician doctor here in Canada to help people like you helped me.
But Shumlat can't work as a doctor here yet. He's become a health support aide, helping out with patients while he works to get his credentials recognized. His wife is working too, as a community navigator, helping other Ukrainian refugees get through that licensing system and back to work.
Because a lot of very high quality medical people come here, doctors, nurses, midwives, and they don't know how to start the job here.
Nova Scotia Health just announced a new program to hire at least 10 Ukrainian navigators like Kudenka to help medical workers like Shumlat get back into the system. There is sympathy for the Ukrainian crisis, but the province's health minister acknowledges there's a crisis here too.
I think our current workforce gaps as well have caused us to look at the way we've done things in the past.
It's not just Ukrainians. Navigators from India and the Philippines will be hired soon because getting relicensed in Canada can take years and cost thousands.
I think it's frustrating for the internationally trained physicians, but it's also frustrating for those that are trained in Canada because we could use extra support and more colleagues.
And each province has a different licensing system. That's why Doctors Nova Scotia has been pushing for an Atlantic license or even a national one. It would help those who arrive from out of country.
They don't know the country well. They might have family in different parts of the country, so it would be a good opportunity for them to try out practice in different spots.
Back at the hospital, Dr. Alex Shumlat is eager to get back to work, treating patients as soon as possible. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Truro.
After the break, we'll return to our top story, a manhunt underway in Saskatchewan.
Let me be clear. We are still looking for the 2 suspects.
What we know about the men at large and the police search to find them next. Welcome back as we track that major developing story tonight in Saskatchewan. Police are searching for 2 suspects after 10 people were killed and at least 15 others injured in a mass stabbing spree. The 2 men police are searching for, right there on your screen, have been identified as Damien and Miles Sanderson, both in their early 30s. Police are warning people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba to be on alert. Sam Sampson is with us now from Regina. Sam, walk us through where the investigation is at right now.
Okay, so police do believe that the suspects are still here in Regina. Their last sighting was around noon local time. Since then, we haven't had any new reports of where their vehicle may be or where they are. But because of that latest, or rather last sighting, police are working on the idea that they are still here in Regina. Now, police did say that because they have a vehicle, that's why they expanded the alert, that dangerous persons alert, to Manitoba and Alberta. That vehicle in question, it's a black Nissan Rogue with a Saskatchewan license plate 119 MPI. Now, for us in Saskatchewan, we have been getting emergency alerts about this all day. Started around 6 a.m. STARS ambulance was dispatched to James Smith Cree Nation, which is about 3 hours north of Regina. They had 3 crews eventually go out, including one with a doctor to help triage. Triage patients, rather, because there were just so many people there. They airlifted people. They sent people to local hospitals as well. RCMP say if there's any critical information overnight, they will put out more of those phone emergency alerts. If not, they will hold a news conference tomorrow at 10:30.
And what can you tell us about the victims? Not a lot of information, I know, but what are police saying?
Not a lot. We have some numbers, though. 10 people are dead. 15 people are in hospital, and police say they believe more people may even have been injured, but they took themselves to hospital. So they ask, if that's you, then please talk to RCMP. Now, James Smith Cree Nation has declared a local state of emergency until the end of the month. They have 2 healthcare centers open for people there to help start physically and mentally healing from this mass murder event. Vashi.
Thanks for the update, Sam. Sam Sampson in Regina. For more on the ongoing manhunt, let's bring in former RCMP Major Crimes Investigator Bruce Pitt-Payne. He's in Maple Ridge, BC. Bruce, this has been going on, as Sam pointed out, since very early this morning. Police offered that update in the afternoon. What do you expect they're doing right now? And how difficult is the task ahead of them, just given the sort of geographic size of Saskatchewan?
It's an extremely difficult task because they can't predict where they're going to go. So strategically, it's all about organization. It's about knowing your roads, knowing where they might go, but also there will be intelligence coming in. Who might these 2 suspects know as well that might lead them to go somewhere to hide out, or if they have a favorite place, who knows? So there's going to be a lot of that going on. It's going to be a very, very busy night for all the police in the 3 provinces that are involved, mainly Saskatchewan and then the adjacent provinces. They're not going to be able to let their guard down for a second, and it means rotating shifts in. It's going to be labor intensive, very labor intensive. And again, that's not even counting the group that's doing the investigation, and that will be huge.
Yeah, if you were sort of taking part in this, how worried would you be about A, the fact that they have a car, which police have talked about, and B, like I pointed out, this started very early this morning, so they've had some time.
As a police officer, I would be more worried about the unknowns, such as would they be in a new vehicle? They can't obviously put all their bets on that it's going to be the same vehicle. In fact, that would make it a lot easier for the police if at the roadblocks. They have to be so vigilant, and we don't know if these 2 have more than just stabbing weapons or whether they have guns, but any vehicle is an extremely dangerous weapon to have. So I really worry about the police tonight out there on the roads because they're out there by themselves, many of them.
Bruce, I'll leave it there. Thanks for your analysis. As always, former RCMP Major Crimes Investigator Bruce Pitt-Payne.
You're welcome.
He's in Maple Ridge, BC. And stay with CBC News. We will be tracking this story throughout the night. Still ahead, though, crews are working to fix a fuel leak on NASA's new moon rocket.
Safety is the top of the list.
We look at what the future holds for the historic mission.
Jenner with control, her shot high, her second of the game.
And the Canadian women stay golden at the World Hockey Championships in Denmark.
We have 13 active crime scenes that we are investigating.
The deadly stabbings that have torn through communities northeast of Saskatoon. 10 people are dead and 15 injured. We will have developments as they become available to us, and we'll share them with you. NASA's moon rocket will stay grounded for now as crews try to fix a fuel leak.
We do not launch until we think it's right.
The launch of Artemis 1, an uncrewed mission around the moon, was called off again yesterday as it was set to take off from the Kennedy Space Center. That's the second time in a week. Crews found a hydrogen leak while trying to transfer fuel to the rocket. The CBC's Nicole Mortellaro is at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Nicole, what more can you tell us about the technical difficulties there?
Yes, well, it all started on Monday.
This is the Space Launch System. This is the core stage. And in this core stage, there's liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. On Monday, after a brief weather delay, they discovered a helium leak. Then they discovered a hydrogen leak. And then they had a problem cooling one of the engines. So they ran out of time in which to fix that last problem and had to scrub the launch on Monday. On Saturday, however, what happened was they saw that same hydrogen leak. It's at a quick disconnect. So if you imagine the launch platform, the tower, there are umbilical cords there that feeding it with power and hydrogen and oxygen, and they have to disconnect as the rocket launches. Well, there was a leak right there, and they could not figure out how to fix that leak. They tried 3 different times, and 2 of the times they tried to, stop the leak, stop the loading of the liquid hydrogen and let it warm up and it would seal itself. That worked on Monday. It didn't work on Saturday, so they ran out of time and unfortunately had to scrub it.
So what comes next for the Artemis moon mission?
Well, this mission, of course, was an uncrewed mission to the moon. It's testing this Orion capsule at the top here that will house astronauts. And right now, they have to make sure that everything's safe and everything's ready to go. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to fix this leak at the pad, try to assess it and figure out what's going on. They are likely to roll back to the vehicle assembly building, that giant rocket building that everybody tends to know about. And that actually has a disadvantage and an advantage. The advantage is that there are platforms there where they can actually work around these parts of the rocket. The disadvantage is it could bring up other issues. So for now, they're going to wait, and on Monday they're going to actually have, or sometime actually in the week, they're going to have an update on what the next steps are, but likely they're going to roll back. And then the next launch window opens at the end of the month, but it's unlikely that they will meet that window. So the launch is probably going to take place in mid-October.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. I think you have a situation to deal with there yourself. Nicole Mortellaro at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The U.S.-Canada rivalry is strong in women's hockey. They faced each other in World Championship finals 20 times, and today, Canada took gold.
Just a great play from the back end.
Second period was decisive. Marie-Philippe Poulin punching through to Brianne Jenner, who delivered.
That's Canada's first goal of the game.
A minute plus later on the clock, power play, and Jenner did it again.
Jenner with control, her shot high, her second of the game.
But it was frenetic defense in the final seconds of the game that sealed the deal.
Canada is golden.
This wasn't an easy tournament. It took time for the team to find its rhythm.
We just kept learning from every game and trying to put some periods together. Sometimes you have to squeak it out at the end and rely on some goaltending and block shots, and we found a way to get it done.
Since the Beijing Olympics earlier this year, this is now the 3rd hockey gold medal win for Canadian women. Coming up, Dave Grohl loses his voice while honoring a friend.
It's times like these you give and give.
Rock and roll legends pay tribute to a fallen brother in our moment.
sing and dance and laugh and cry and scream and make some noise so he could hear us right now.
The Foo Fighters were back on stage in London for a special concert in memory of bandmate Taylor Hawkins. Hawkins passed away at a hotel in Colombia in March, sending shockwaves through the music industry and right around the world. Tonight, his tribute is our moment.
It's times like these to give and give.
This was the Foo Fighters' first concert without drummer Taylor Hawkins, who died in March. Joining them on stage, some of Hawkins' musical heroes, from Queen to AC/DC. And Paul McCartney. But perhaps the most significant act from his teenage son, Shane Hawkins, filling his dad's seat on the drums to perform My Hero. This was the first of 2 concerts in memory of Hawkins, with proceeds going to music charities.
I hope that you guys felt all the love from all of us and all of the performers, because we felt it from you for Taylor tonight.
The second concert will be held September 27th in Los Angeles. This is the first time they've played since Hawkins' death. They canceled actually all of their concert dates. After that, the concert took place for 6 hours. And that is the National for September 4th. I'm Vashi Capellos. Good night.